We are at the end of Malachim days, the King's Book 2. We're in the chapter 23, and I wanted to mention something that I mentioned last week. There actually are two opinions about, and I wanted to mention that. What is that? And that is that we were talking about Yeshayahu HaMelech, King Josiah. King Josiah was a very righteous king, and yet he did seem to make some type of a mistake, which led to his passing, led to his death. And what was that? So last week, the way we explained it was based on the Medrash in Eicha. The Medrash in Eicha says that Yeshayahu did not listen to Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu had told him, do not fight the king of Egypt. His name was Paroi Nechei, and he did not listen. And because of that, Paroi killed him. Paroi fought a war and ultimately killed Yeshayahu. The thing is that why would Yeshayahu not have listened to the prophet Jeremiah? Why? What would the reason be? Why would he not have listened? Seems surprising that he wouldn't have listened to Yirmiyahu, the prophet. That's very surprising. He was such a righteous king. And the simple understanding, I guess, is that Jeremiah, when he told him about not fighting against the king of Egypt, he felt, well, you're giving me your advice. I believe that the Torah says not this way. So he thought he was hearing personal advice from Jeremiah. Really, Jeremiah was giving him a prophecy that he had heard from Hashem. And instead, Jeremiah was really giving a prophecy, and Yeshayahu was supposed to listen. Now, Yeshayahu was so convinced that he had eradicated all the idol worship from the midst of the Jewish people and from the camps of the Jewish people that he believed that b'cherev lo yisa'avor b'artzachem, no enemies, no armies should even have to pass through my land. And he wanted to fulfill that to the fullest extent of what that means.
600 feet, take exit 7 for I-678 north toward Banwick Expressway, Bronx.
I'm sorry, 1 second.
Take exit 7.
1 second, something was strange over there.
Continue on I-678 north for 6 miles.
Hold on 1 second, let's figure this out. Google. Not sure why this is making these noises.
Somebody's in New York. Banwick.
Yeah, but I'm at the airport.
Oh.
So I don't know how these noises are coming on my. Okay, well, let's see if it doesn't bother us anymore, we'll be okay.
Somebody's driving and they have to put themselves on mute.
I know, but I'm far.
It's
someone
not
else.
you.
It's
somebody else is driving and they have to put themselves on mute.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe that's it.
One of us is driving.
Okay, we won't say who. But,
right.
Okay. We'll try to mute everyone. And
this just looks like a washing machine. Really, it's a truck delivering washing machines.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Anyway, looks like we're all muted, so should be good. Okay, so basically, what I was explaining was that this Medrash in Eicha has this understanding here about this dialogue between Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah the prophet, and King Yeshayahu, and the fact that Yeshayahu didn't listen, which is very surprising, and the fact that maybe it had to do with the fact that Jeremiah didn't clearly state that this was a prophecy, and therefore Yeshayahu thought that this was his personal advice, which he was an experienced person, and he was sincere, but maybe he didn't accept that advice, and he felt that his understanding of the Torah in this area was something that he didn't want to give into. He felt this is what the Torah says to do, and even though Jeremiah might be advising him based on natural experience, but this was not what he understood the Torah to be saying. And that would be a little understanding of what was going on between Jeremiah and Yoshiyahu. Ultimately, Yoshiyahu was killed by Paroi, by this Pharaoh of Egypt, king of Egypt. Now, Pharaoh did not plan on hurting the Jewish people. He just wanted to pass through the land. And this is what it boiled down to. It ended up, because Yoshiyahu refused to let him through, it ended up being that he was killed. Now, the other source of this story is slightly different, and that's what I wanted to share with you, and that is that the Gemara in Tainus says it a little differently, that Yoshiyahu did not ask advice from Jeremiah. And really, he should have asked advice from Jeremiah. And because he didn't ask advice from Jeremiah, therefore he didn't find out. He didn't know what Hashem really wanted. And because he didn't know what Hashem really wanted, he didn't hear Jeremiah's prophecy. And it boils down to the fact that he didn't humble himself to go ask advice from the prophet. And so that's the Gemara in Tainus. That is the Gemara in Tractate Tainus, that Josiah was at fault for not consulting the prophet Jeremiah, who would have told him not to resist and not to protest against this king going through his land. And what it also boils down to is one more point, and that is that Jeremiah was aware that there were Jewish people who were still worshiping idols, but Josiah was not aware of that. Josiah thought that he had eradicated all the idol worship, but really there were Jewish people that were still, or that had come back to idol worship. And the way they did it was interesting, how they pulled it off, because Josiah had actually had emissaries and officers and officials checking out, making sure that there is no idol worship. So how did these people pull off idol worship when they had such a group of FBI agents and CIA agents and who knows what, and Mossad, and all of them were working together to get rid of all the idol worship? How were there people that were able to pull it off? So what they were doing was they were able to put on the back of their doors, they would have idols, but they would only be visible when the doors were closed, so you saw both doors next to each other. So it's like a half an idol on one, a half an idol on the other. And so it meant nothing when the doors were open. But when they were closed, then you actually had the full idol. And so that was the trick that these people pulled off. And that's why Josiah was very convinced that he had eradicated all the problems, all the idol worship. Anyway, so this is the story. And we were learning.
Brought me my lunch.
I made it just for you.
Thank you.
Right, one second. Looks like we have some. Okay, we got to mute people here. We'll try this again. See. Participants, mute all. Mute all. Okay, now let's try that again. Okay, so we are in verse, I believe, verse 29. Verse 29.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I just want to ask you, what book is coming after this?
Well, it's subject to our decision what we would like to study. Of course, the thing is that these books of the Tanakh flow very differently than the next books of the Tanakh. And so because of that, there's reason to say maybe we should jump around to some of the later books, maybe some of the Megillah. So I was thinking of doing Megillas Eicha, but because Tisha B'av is coming up. But again, it depends on when we finish. We still have chapter 24 and 25 left. So let's see when we finish, and maybe we will just continue straight on. You know, if you people want to look into the different books of the Tanakh, there are different options. You know, you continue on to Yeshaya and then Yirmiyah, Yechezkel. We could just go in order, or we could possibly jump to the Megillas, or we could maybe do the book of Daniel, which is a very interesting book. But again, it's these books that we have learned until now are like one flow. The other books are there's a lot of poetic stuff, and there's other interesting stuff with the a little above our level with the Merkava, the chariot of Hashem, things like that. You know, it gets into other stuff, and then it gets it's also the poetry and so on. So we'll have to choose in the next 3 weeks. I think we'll have to be deciding what we're gonna start, maybe after the summer, I guess. Okay, so we have here chapter 23, verse 29, and verse 29 says that in his days, Parai Nechai, the king of Egypt, went up to wage war against the king of Assyria by the Euphrates River. King Josiah went to confront him, and Parai killed him in Megiddo when he saw him. So here is the story of Josiah getting killed by Parai Nechai, and as we see in the verse, he wasn't planning on even having a war with the Jewish people, but somehow, as we explained, Josiah went and confronted him because he didn't want him passing through his land. Now, there's also a question of, did it really happen in Megiddo where Josiah died? Because in Divrei Hayomim, it implies that he passed away in Jerusalem, or he was killed in it. So he died in Jerusalem. So it's a little hard to reconcile that. But let's see. It says the next verse says, his servants drove him dead from Megiddo in a chariot, brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his grave. And the common people took Yehoiachin, son of Josiah, anointed him, and crowned him king in place of his father. So from verse 30, it seems like maybe he was buried in Jerusalem, not that he died in Jerusalem. There is another maybe way of interpreting it, that the people understood the magnitude of the loss in Jerusalem. When his body arrived in Jerusalem, that's when they realized the magnitude of the loss. Josiah was exceptionally righteous and holy, even though he might have made this mistake. He did make some type of mistake in the end of his life, but nevertheless, as everyone makes mistakes, but nevertheless, Josiah was of great holiness and purity and righteousness. And now what comes after Josiah is that the king who's going to take over, his name is Yehoiachin. Yehoiachin is the son of Yoshiyahu. Now, why did they anoint him? Normally, a king that is the son of a previous king doesn't need to be anointed. So here we see that Yehoiachin is anointed, and this seems surprising. And so what we realize is that Yehoiachin is not the oldest son. Yehoiachin is really maybe second to oldest, or possibly even third to oldest. And therefore, he was anointed because there was an older brother that theoretically could have mixed in over here and fought and thought that he should be chosen as being king. Yes, David.
In the Me'am Lo'ez, they bring the whole section from the Book of Chronicles, and there it says that he was shot in Megiddo, and he said, "Take me away, for I'm very weak." And they took him from the battle chariot and put him in the traveling chariot, and they brought him to Jerusalem.
Right. So the only thing is, the verse here says Vayarkivuhu avodav mace mi Megiddo. They took him dead from Megiddo. So that's where that's why I was it's a little hard to explain it that way. Of
Right.
course, that's an easy way of answering, saying, "Oh, well, he was shot, but he didn't die." But it says mace. They took him mace mi Megiddo. I don't know how they're translating that in the Mayam Roys. You see what I'm saying? Like it does say.
Yeah.
But Rabbi,
Yes, yes, Ezra.
would you not use a different verb? Vayakivu. Vayakivu means they they placed him standing,
Uh-huh.
or like if you're riding on a horse, you're sitting on a horse.
Yeah, they rode him. They rode him. You're right. Okay, it's a good point. So what would that mean? That he looked
So
like he
it's
was alive?
Vayakivu probably means he was propped up, and it looked like he perhaps was still alive, perhaps as a way of
Uh-huh.
providing
People didn't realize. Oh, that's a
to
nice
the rest of his
interpretation.
men.
Right, right. Okay, the great answer. How do you like that, David? Ezra has a good answer. That he looked like he was alive, and the people, at least to the world, he was alive until they reached Jerusalem. And this was in order to not to cause people to lose their to lose their strength at war, not to lose their confidence in war. Yeah, it's a great answer, Ezra. Very nice, very nice. I like that. Okay, and so the verse continues and says that they took this Yehoiachaz, this second or third son of Josiah, anointed him, crowned him the king in place of his father. Now, the question is, why did they do that? Why didn't they take the older son? Why did they take this younger son to be king? So there is an understanding that it has to do with the fact that that this son was fit to be king. This son was the son that was much more capable of being king, while the other son wasn't. That's this one fit the bill better, fit the job, and that's why they took this son versus who was more qualified than his older brother. And there is also an understanding that they wanted to sin more. The people wanted to sin, and therefore they would rather have Yehoiachaz than to have the other brother who was maybe not as easy to get away with these type of sins. And so Yehoiachaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 3 months in Jerusalem. So his reign did not last that long, and you have to understand that once Josiah was killed, the destruction is happening. It's It means it's about to happen. It's just a matter of time, but it's really around the corner. And this king Yehoiachaz, he was 23 and he reigned for 3 months. His mother's name was Chamutal Bas Yirmiyahu Milivna. So we find another person with the name Yirmiyahu, not only Jeremiah the prophet, but this is the son of Chamutal, who's the daughter of Jeremiah from Livna. And he did and then this Yehoiachaz, he did what was evil in the eyes of Hashem, like everything that his forefathers had done. What does it mean, his forefathers? It means Menashe and Ammon. He followed in evil, their sins. And the truth is, he even took it a step further. The Talmud brings that Yehoiachaz was quite wicked, and he even there's a story in the Talmud Sanhedrin. Let me just pull it up over here 1 second. In the story, no, here. Where the Gemara says, why doesn't it mention, can everyone hear me? Hello? Yeah? Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. So the Talmud asks, why doesn't it mention Yehoiakim among the list of people who do not get the world to come? Oh, I'm sorry, Yehoiakim. Oh, I'm actually, 1 second. We are, this is really the next king, Yehoiachaz, and then after you, okay, let me just, I sort of jumping too fast. We're really before this is Yehoiachaz, who was only king for 3 months. Now comes Yehoiakim. That's what the Talmud that's who the Talmud talks about. So let's just wait a moment and we'll get to it. Back to chapter 23, verse 32. Verse
Rabbi,
33, yes.
says here that he was called Yehoachaz because he grabbed the throne when it wasn't rightly his. The grabbed is Aleph Ches Zion, like Shnai Mochsin.
What did he
That
grab?
was, he grabbed the throne.
Oh,
That
when
was
he
that.
took
Yeah,
his older brother.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
That wasn't his. That wasn't his. His name was Shalom.
Right.
And they came. They named him afterwards Yehoiakim because Yehoachaz because he grabbed the throne when it wasn't rightly his. So Achaz like Shnai Mochsin, Aleph Ches Zion.
Yeah, no, achaz means grab. Yeah. Okay, good, very good insight. Okay, verse 33, Paranachai imprisoned him at Rivla in the land of Hamas to prevent him from reigning in Jerusalem, levied a fine upon the land 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. So what exactly happened here? Paranachai, why was he upset with this Yehoiachaz? So on a simple level, Josiah had gone and fought against them a lot, did not want to allow them through the land. So Taroi wanted to get revenge and I guess was angry that they even fought his army. And so that's what it seems like why he's angry at Yehoiachaz, even though Paroi initially had no issue with the Jewish people. But then there's another understanding that that Yehoiachaz, see what happened was Paroi was fighting Assyria, which is what we were seeing before. That's why he was even trying to get through the land. And so Yehoiachaz was angry at Yehoiachaz was angry at Paroi for killing his father, so he wanted to take revenge. So when Paroi was fighting Assyria, Yehoiachaz tried to avenge his father's blood, so to speak, and he made some type of a issue in Egypt. He went down to Egypt because he thought he had an opportunity then to sort of like avenge his father's blood. And so therefore, what happened was Paroi came back from Ashur and he decided, look at what they did. And he wanted to sort of like now take his revenge back, like never ends. So he took the king captive and he put a heavy fine and of course the fine was also sort of like on the people, because why did they appoint this guy Yehoiakim? Look at the evil that he did. That's coming from Paro's way of thinking, and that was his reason for doing this. And Paro Nephoi imprisoned him at Rivla in the land of Hamas to prevent him from remaining in Jerusalem. He levied this fine upon the land, 100 talents of silver, talents of gold. Paro Nephoi then crowned Eliakim, the son of Josiah, in place of his father Josiah. So now we've got Eliakim instead, and now Paro changes his name to Yehoiakim. So his name was Eliakim, who changed his name to Yehoiakim. And in a certain sense, changing someone's name is somewhat degrading and showing that, you don't even own your name. So he changed his name to Yehoiakim. Paro took Yehoiachaz, returned to Egypt, and Yehoiachaz died over there. And sorry, I know my mistake. And Yehoiakim delivered the silver and the gold to Paro, but he assessed upon the populace to pay the money that Paro had demanded. He imposed upon the populace, each man according to his means, the silver and gold that he had to give to Paro Nephoi. So this is the story of Yehoiakim or Eliakim, and he's basically getting everyone to help out with paying this great fine. Now, interestingly enough, the Radak over here says that in verse 34, verse 35, that he assessed on the populace to pay the money, and he made each man pay according to his means. So the Radak over here says whatever people were fit to give, which was according to their means, which was considered something positive in a certain sense about Yehoiakim, that he actually cared about each person's individual. He didn't just take whatever he wanted, but he gave the fine based on their ability, and that's what they had to pay. Now, verse 36, Yehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was, what was his mother's name? Zevuda. It's actually spelled Zavida, but we pronounce it Zevuda, the daughter of Pedaiah from Rumah. And he did what was evil in the eyes of Hashem, like everything that his forefathers had done. And again, we have this where it's implying that he followed his forefathers, meaning Omoin and Menashe. Those are the two bad kings that were in charge not that long before, and right before Yoshiyahu, and he was basically following in their footsteps. Now, the Talmud, as I was mentioning before, but it's really about this king Yehoiakim, who reigned for 11 years. So this Yehoiakim, the Talmud has some things to say about him. What does the Talmud say? I'm just going to read for you a few statements in the Talmud. So here we go. Why does it not list Yehoiakim as one of the people who do not get a portion in the world to come? So it says because Reb Chia bar Rabbi Avuya says that it says there's a verse that mentions about the skull of Yehoiakim. It's written on the skull of Yehoiakim, this and another, which means this retribution you have already received, and another one. So there was something about the skull of Yehoiakim that it says this and another, meaning this retribution, this punishment that you've got, and there'll be more to come, and there's going to be one more punishment to come. And what is this story about? So it says that the grandfather of Reb Preda was famous for teaching one of his students 400 times because the student was not capable of understanding. And then one time he even taught him another 400 times till he finally got it. So this is the grandfather of Reb Preda. He found a skull that was thrown down at the gates of Jerusalem. And on the skull it said, Zois v'yoida cheres. It said this and another, this and still another. That's what it said on the skull. So he buried it, but it wouldn't stay buried. It like kept re-emerging from the ground. So he buried it again, and it still didn't stay buried. So this was the skull of Yehoiakim, he said. This must be the skull of Yehoiakim. Because it says about Yehoiakim, he will be buried, kvuras chamor yikaver. He's going to be buried, a burial of a donkey. And he's going to be dragged and thrown. Choiv v'hashleif. That's what it says. And be dragged and thrown beyond the gates of Jerusalem. So he said to himself, "Hey, this is the king. How could I let his head just stay here? I mean, it didn't work. I tried burying it twice. It didn't work. Now this must be Yehoiakim, who was a king for 11 years, right? This was a king. Well, it's not right that we should be disrespecting it. It says. So it's not right we should disrespect it. This is a Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara says that he wrapped the skull in silk and he put it in a chest, seemingly like in his house. He put it in a voice for basifsa, some type of a chest, a closet. And it seems like somewhere in his house. Now his wife, can you imagine this? His wife comes and sees the skull, and she thought, "Oy vey, this must be the skull of my husband's first wife that he can never forget." This is the wife of Rav Preda's grandfather. That it was obviously a second marriage, and she had this either paranoia, or maybe she was right that he was constantly thinking about his first wife, and she said. She said, "Oy vey, this must be her." She found this wrapped up in silk, this head. It must be her skull. So, what did she do with it? So she fired up the oven. She lit the oven and she burned the skull. And this is the meaning, the Talmud says, of what it said on the skull. This and still another, which means he was meant to suffer retribution, the fact that he was thrown into the streets when he was killed, and number two, that he was consumed by fire by the wife of Preda's grandfather. Now, what this basically means is it actually has a positive meaning to it, and that is So the positive side of this is that he actually got atoned, and he actually merited to get buried, to get a portion in the world to come. Now, why is his name not mentioned in the among the people who don't get a portion in the world to come? Because he actually does get a portion in the world to come, because he was so humiliated and punished that he actually got a portion he actually got his portion back, so to speak. Now, there is an understanding here that what was his sins? If you look into what his sins were, it says he had two sins. One is that he inscribed blasphemies and obscenities on his body. And the other thing was, he claimed that Hashem's light is not necessary. We don't need the sun. We don't need these things. We can replace it with our own means of illumination. We don't need Hashem. That was his claim. This is this king. So he had two major punishments that he sort of inscribed, I guess, some type of tattoo on his body, things that were totally, terrible, awful things like obscenities and blasphemies on his body. And
Yeah,
it
just
says
like
that,
today.
yeah, people put all different types of stuff on their tattoos. So yeah. So it says that because of that, his body would not be allowed to be in the ground. The ground refused to accept it. And then the second thing is that he claimed that we don't need Hashem's light. So his body ended up being burned in a fire, sort of like in connection with his claim that we don't need Hashem's light. So those were the two sins that the Talmud mentions on a different page, which was before this story. And then you have this story of how his skull ended up being thrown there and being burned in the end. Now, so that's basically the story of Eliakim or Yehoiakim, two names that he had. But the thing is that a lot of people think, it's an interesting thing that comes up very often. People say, "Oh, anyone that has a tattoo cannot be buried in a Jewish cemetery." So the truth of the matter is, people, I'm sure you've heard that claim before. People think that that's true, and I'm not sure where it came from, because maybe mothers never wanted their boys or their kids to have a tattoo, so they scared them. Oh, you won't be able to be buried. Don't ever do that. It's like a good way to scare them off. But in truth, of course, a Jew can be buried even if they have a tattoo in a Jewish cemetery. But what I was thinking is this might be the source, maybe where that idea came from, that the ground refuses to accept. I mean, this Eliakim, he had some type of a tattoo, it seems like, on his body, and the ground refused to accept him. Based on this understanding that the ground refused to accept him. So obviously, it only happened to him, true, and not to other people. But the idea that the ground could refuse to accept such a person, and the body kept emerging outside of the ground, maybe gave this understanding that person who has a tattoo, they can't really, the ground might not want to accept them. But anyway, I bring that up just because it's a common question I get asked. So people are always trying to find out if it's really true. Are they not allowed to be buried in a Jewish cemetery because they have a tattoo? It is really sad, because I have a friend actually that has tattoos on his body. He became a Baal Tshuva. He became religious, and he says he has to go to mikveh. He goes to the mikveh every day, but he has to go at like 5 a.m. He says, otherwise it's too embarrassing. So he says, and it would cost him maybe $20,000. This was like 20 years ago. He told me it would cost him $20,000 to get the tattoos removed from his body. But anyway, and he also has to wear long sleeve shirts, he told me, on the hot days, because otherwise the tattoos is just too embarrassing to walk around in religious circles with all these tattoos. But in any event, that is the story of Yehoiakim, that he had some type of inscription on his body about that things that were totally inappropriate. Terrible things on his body, and then ground refused to accept him, and then he got, as well as his disrespect to Hashem for claiming that he doesn't need the sun. Okay, so now we have concluded chapter 23. Now we're up to chapter 24. Chapter 24. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, invaded. Yehoiakim became a vassal to him for 3 years, but then he rebelled against him. By Yoshev, by Yimrod, by, and he after the 3 years, he retracted, and he rebelled against him. And so this is the first time we find this name of the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, the wicked king who ultimately is going to cause the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and the exile of the entire Jewish people. And we know that the king of Ashur had exiled the 10 tribes, but now we're at the end of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, and this is going to be final. The final exile and destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is going to be run by Nebuchadnezzar and by his officers. Now, the verse says that in verse 2, Hashem incited against him troops of the Kasdim, the Chaldeans, and troops of Aram, troops of Moab, which is what we read about in last week's Torah portion, the Moabites trying to hire Bilam, Balak, the king of Moab, trying to hire Bilam to curse the Jewish people. Those are the Moabites. And the troops of the children of Ammon, and sent them against Judah to annihilate. So Hashem sent these incited against him the troops of these places, these people, and he sent them against Judah. So the commentaries mention that on their own they actually wouldn't have succeeded, but because of the sins of Manasseh, it caused Hashem to incite them and, so to speak, participate almost with these people and cause them to succeed. And this is in accordance with the word of Hashem that he had spoken through his servants, the prophets. Indeed, the decree was issued against Judah by the word of Hashem to remove them from his presence for the sins of Manasseh, for everything that he had done, and for the sins, also for the innocent blood that he had shed. He had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and Hashem did not want to forgive. And here we see the magnitude of the sins, especially murder. And we mentioned when we saw this verse the first time around, when we were learning about Manasseh, there was a very similar verse that mentioned these terms about filling Jerusalem with innocent blood. And we said, according to one understanding, it means that he killed his own grandfather, Yeshayahu Hanavi, Isaiah the prophet. That was Manasseh's grandfather. Because Chizkiah, Manasseh's father, had married Yeshayahu's daughter. So the other understanding, of course, is that there was bloodshed. It was a tremendous amount of bloodshed and innocent blood. Now, the rest of the deeds of Yehoiakim and all that he did, behold, they are recorded in the book of Chronicles of the king of Judah. Yehoiakim lay with his forefathers, and his son Yehoiachin reigned in his place. That's verse 6. Now, the king of Egypt no longer left his country, for the king of Babylonia had occupied the brook of Egypt to the Euphrates River, and all the land that had belonged to the king of Egypt now was no longer Egypt's land, and it was owned by Babylon. And Yehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 3 months in Jerusalem. His mother's name was and Nechushta, the daughter of El Nasan, from Yerushalayim. And he did what was evil in the eyes of Hashem, like everything that his father had done. And at that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylonia, came up to wage war against Jerusalem. And the city came under siege. This is very apropos to what we're going through now in the 3 weeks. Yesterday was a fast day, and today, the next 3 weeks, we are mourning the destruction of both temples, and especially the second temple. But here we're learning about the first temple, and both temples were destroyed on Tisha B'Av, which is exactly 3 weeks from yesterday, meaning it's going to be on a Sunday in close to 3 weeks. And that's Tisha B'Av, and that's what we are getting at right here, the story of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and the exile of the Jewish people from the land of Israel. And so it says here that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylonia, came upon the city while his servants were besieging it. And Yehoiachin, king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylonia, he, his mother, his servants, his ministers, his officers. The king of Babylonia took him captive in the 8th year of his reign. He also removed from there all the treasures of the temple of Hashem. That means he took all the treasures of the Beis Hamikdash and the treasures of the king's palace, and he stripped all the gold vessels that Shlomo, king of Israel, had made in the sanctuary of Hashem, as Hashem had said. So this is all part of this. He's taking all the treasures, getting rid of everything from the Beis Hamikdash, and he exiled all of Jerusalem and all the officers and all the men of war, 10,000 exiles, as well as the Chorosh and the Maskir, which are the artisans and the gatekeepers. And so there was no one left except for the poorest of the common people. Now, who are these artisans and gatekeepers? So it mentions that they were the scholars that were Chorosh, is they would cause everyone else to be quiet when they said something. And because their logic was so clear, and they would be, the maskir was that they would, when they gave when they closed the case, no one else was even thinking that they're going to open it up, so to speak. Maskir comes from the word closing. Once they closed something up, no one was going to be opening it. And in other words, they knew that they were correct, everything they said, and they couldn't, there's nothing to, there was no room for debate or discussion. And this again is the, what we should call maybe the second exile, because we already had the exile of the 10 tribes. So now comes the second exile, and really there's going to be, this is not everyone. This is the Chorosh and the Maskir and the, he exiled, it says, all of Jerusalem, all the officers, all the men of war, 10,000 exiles, and there was no one left except for the poorest of the common people. So we'll soon see. We're going to stop here, but we'll soon see as we learn more about how the who was left and what happened to the community that was left, which is the basis of a fast day that we fast called Tzom Gedalia. We'll soon see what that is. Okay, we're going to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.